right now I am living on the cash flow that's coming in from these parks. For me, I wanted more growth and more wealth.
Is it 7 figures in equity in that one park?
Yeah, it's like 1.4 million in that one deal. I had $110,000 promissory note from the seller on top of the bank loan. I just had it appraised for 3.7 million.
12 years as a Pennsylvania state trooper, a massive portfolio of 242 mobile home pads, from patrolling the streets to providing the debt-free roadmap for the families on them. He's a former law enforcement officer who traded his badge for a calculator, specializing in the high-stakes niche of mobile home park acquisitions and contrarian financial coaching. Today's guest is Karl Kulpak. He is an investor who focuses on the scale everyone else misses and the financial habits most people ignore. Karl, welcome to the Capital Conversations podcast.
Thanks, AJ. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And Karl, you and I met through a mastermind, and that's a multifamily mastermind. But a lot of folks get their education from a different person, Dave Ramsey. You're a Dave Ramsey-certified coach, and yet you manage a massive real estate portfolio. Just curious, what do you think about Dave Ramsey's teachings, and how do you incorporate those or not into the real estate space?
Yeah, so when you first start off, I was a financial coach. So I built debt plans and helped people pay off debt and kind of coach them on where to go from heavily indebted to back to square one. So I think Dave is great for that client. However, my opinion differs when you get to a certain level. Amassing wealth versus just paying off debt and being, break even and happy and content where you are. For me, I wanted more growth and more wealth. And Dave and his teachings does not get you to that point.
It sounds like you took some of that other education outside of the Ramsey point of view and used it to build a portfolio. Would you just walk us back, though, before you bought the 242 mobile home pads? What did your life look like? Were you independently wealthy? Did you inherit a bunch of money from your family? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I'll start from where I started as a state trooper. I used to live in New Jersey. I got a conditional letter of employment to come to Pennsylvania, and I started my job as a Pennsylvania state trooper back in 2013. So I was working my W-2, working as much overtime as humanly possible, and just saving that money. And then it got to a point where I was like, man, I can only work so many hours. This is not going to cut it. Like, there's a limit of what you can do physically. So I bought my first rental property in 2016, which actually was a single family rental. And then I bought another one and then a fourplex, did a couple flips, and then rolled that all into my very first mobile home park, which was in 2024. So it's a longer journey than where 2024 to now.
Yeah. So you started with single family rentals, single family flips, and then graduated to much larger mobile home parks. Can you walk us through that shift? Because a lot of people see that and they think like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Number one, I don't have the money. Number two, I don't know how to do that. And number three, I don't know where to find the people that might help me with that. So how did you break that down tactically?
Yeah, so I was doing the multifamily, single family rental, and I was just saving all the money I was making. I wasn't spending it. I was putting some back into the properties, but I was holding on to a lot of that from all the overtime and all the work and just waiting for something better to come along, because it was going to take me forever to get financially free just trying to do single families. So I ended up seeing my mobile home park coaches online, Kevin and Tia Spangenberg, and they were hosting a 4-day course on exactly what they do from like top to bottom. I was like, wow, I need that. So I ended up going to their event. I actually won a ticket to it, and I just had to get myself there. Thankfully, it was in Pennsylvania, so I could just drive. And they went line by line, and I saw the numbers they were putting up and the scale that they had grown to, because they have over 1,500 lots, and it's all owned by a husband and wife team. And I was like, I got to do that. So after the event ended, I went out and just started submitting LOI after LOI after LOI until I landed my first deal about 4 months after that event.
Wow. Yeah. And for those who don't know, LOI stands for letter of intent. It's essentially an offer before the purchase and sale agreement. So you started with the single family space, the rentals, the flipping, and then it sounds like you reinvested that money back into yourself. And that may be the big differentiator is rather than going and trying to buy more single families, you're thinking about, I'm not going to reach that level where I'm not just paying off debt, but instead of making monthly income in a substantial, significant amount, you reinvested that cash into a higher level skill set. How much harder was it to go into the mobile home park space? Did it take you hours and hours and hours of time? Was it a similar lift to learning how to flip? What did that look like from a mindset standpoint?
I think I spent hours of time learning on my own as well, because I would drive about an hour each way to work. So every day I would listen to podcasts. So I would listen to mobile home park investing podcasts to and from work every single day. So I absorbed a ton of information on top of going to the course. So I think that also made me feel more confident and also a larger knowledge base to be able to go out and take that action and be able to buy my first park. But I think investing in both free education and paid education from someone like a mentor that's really doing it, I think saves you a lot of money in the long run. And you can skip over a lot of problems that maybe other people might make had they not learned from someone already doing it.
And I think that's an important distinction is learning from people who are currently and actively doing it. How did you vet your mentor before you chose them? How did you decide, hey, I'm actually going to go with this person. I'm going to learn from these people?
Well, I knew they were actively buying. They were posting their deals that they're closing. I could look up their properties and see like, hey, they actually own those. And they were talking about, hey, we're actively operating these parks right now in real time. Like, we're not just gurus talking about what you could be doing. We are actually doing it. So I followed them online, saw what they're doing, and just knew that they were true operators.
So that first deal that you took down, you saved up a bunch of money from these flips, these single family homes, your W-2, and you put it into this park. Would you walk me through that first deal? If you're willing to, just like numbers, how you found it, what the deal looked like.
Sure. Yeah. So I was looking for parks. I was like, where do I buy these things? They were doing a lot of off-market marketing, like calling owners. And I was looking on Crexy and LoopNet. So I found a deal on Crexy where most people think deals go to die. And I found a deal that had been sitting on there for quite some time. And it was priced right at $525. It was a 39 unit pad. It was in Ohio, which is not a market that I was happened to look in, but I just kept scrolling a little too far on the map, ended up in Ohio. And the numbers made sense. Like, I was looking at what Kevin and Tia were underwriting. Then I would look at these numbers. I was like, okay, these could work. And I realized that this deal is a home run if I could do it right. So I bought it with a bank loan, which 2 weeks before I was supposed to close it, my original bank backed out and said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do this. And so I was left like, now what? And it's physically impossible to get another bank to close in 2 weeks. So I extended the contract, and the bank that was originally holding the note actually decided to lend on it again, thankfully. And I had $110,000 promissory note from the seller on top of the bank loan. So I came in with low money down, closing costs, and then I did the rehab budget out of pocket, which was about $225,000 all in.
I laughed when you mentioned the bank pulling out, because I think all of us after a certain point have had that happen. 2 weeks before closing, you just find out like, hey, we can't finance this. Ah, shoot. Okay, what do I do now? I think the other thing that is kudos to you, and sometimes it's actually tough to make happen, is that seller promissory note, not just negotiating the seller carryback, but also having the bank accept it. Some banks just don't allow the seller carryback or a seller second. How did you communicate with the bank on that? Did you have any stories with that? Did they have any trouble there?
The bank was actually on board with it since they had already financed it. They knew what the cash flow was. And I showed them what the cash flow was going to be after I took over, which was more than double of what it was making now. So they were on board with the plan, and the debt service was still going to be well above what the cost of the loan was going to be. So actually, the cost of the loan was zero because it was 0% interest for 1 year. However, I did end up extending it. So, but the DSCR was fine. So that was actually a great option for them to be okay with that. It really helped me out in getting that first deal closed.
And DSCR, for those who don't know, is debt service coverage ratio. That is the difference between your net operating income and how much your mortgage is. So what Karl is saying is that after his seller note, even then the debt service coverage ratio is pretty good, meaning he has plenty of money left over in order to pay his mortgage. So Karl, you got that first deal done. What was it like operating that first deal? I feel like people skip over that a lot when they talk about different deals and growing portfolios. What were some of the challenges of buying that first deal that maybe you didn't expect that you had to take on and handle?
So I think one of the big things is going out there and understanding what the dynamic of the community is and what value you should be bringing. So do you need a big cleanup? Do you need to rip down homes? Do you need to submeter the utilities? All that during due diligence period, and kind of getting an idea of what you should be doing when you get there. So I think that is a key thing. But one of the mistakes I made, if I could go back, I would have left most of the park-owned homes up that I tore down, because we tore down about 6 homes. And the difficulty of infill, of bringing a new home and setting it on an existing lot, was way harder than I expected. I thought it was just going to be pretty simple, pouring a pad, updating utilities, dropping a home, and boom, there you go. But it was a lot more nuanced and a lot more red tape from the state than I had expected. And so my timeline was much longer than expected. So if I could do it again, I probably would just rehab those existing homes if they're not too bad.
Yeah, it always takes twice as long and costs twice as much, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
So for your deal after that, walk us through that. What did it look like taking on the second, third, and fourth deals? Was it a cakewalk? Was it hard to find? Did you start looking at deals off of Crexi and off of LoopNet and going direct to seller? How did you find the subsequent deals?
Yeah, so after I did this first one, I kind of got my feet wet, understood what it's going to take to operate it, and I knew that I could do it. So then I started looking at more deals. Once this one was stabilized, I found another park on Crexi, and it was a 55-unit park out in Van Wert, Ohio, which is way west. And it was city water, city sewer, with 51 of 55 occupied. And the other 3 had homes, and there was 1 vacant lot. So the occupancy was great. It was on city utilities. They're older homes. They're close together, narrow roads. But I ended up paying $2 million for that on a seller finance note. So I assumed an existing seller finance note from the current seller, and then I brought a private lender in to make up the difference. So that was another low money down deal, but I just had it appraised for $3.7 million.
So you're able to build, is it 7 figures in equity in that one park?
Yeah, it's like 1.4 million in that one deal. I put another 250 grand or so into it.
Awesome. Apartment complex owners will hear that. And I don't know how far the distance is between these 2 Ohio cities, but I would imagine it's not an insignificant distance. How far are they from each other?
Probably like 3 hours.
3 hours. Yeah. So an apartment complex owner might hear that and think, man, if I'm self-managing that'd be really tough. Do you use third-party management? Do you manage in-house? What are some of the challenges or complexities with how you manage these?
I would say it's easier to manage a mobile home park than it is an apartment complex, because in a mobile home park, most of the time they're tenant-owned homes, or preferably tenant-owned homes. So that means each resident is maintaining their own home. They're doing all the maintenance. They're fixing the stairs or the toilet or the light bulb. That's their responsibility. So there's a lot less hands-on maintenance activity at a mobile home park than there is an apartment complex. So it's a lot easier to manage from a distance instead of being right there and having to go to the property or having a third-party management company. So I do manage in-house. I use in-park managers. So each park has a resident that's the in-park manager that handles my day-to-day activities. They go to court, they post notices, they take pictures of violations, and then I'm more of the regional manager. So I just brought on a VA to help me with the administrative stuff on my end. So that'll be a huge help. But right now it's me and all the in-park managers, of about 4 or 5 of them. So it's still, I'm doing a lot of operational work still.
Do your in-park managers handle the leasing? Are they also kind of the leasing agents? Or how do you handle infill or getting new folks in the park?
They do handle the leasing. So let's say we have a home goes vacant, we renovate it, and then I'll have the in-park manager post pictures and market it. And then if they reach out, it comes to me on like an automated text system. And then I'll reach out to the manager to schedule a time for the resident or prospective resident to see the home. So it's kind of us working together to market them, but they'll do the showings and the listings. And then I'll do the physical lease up is all e-lease. So I just email the lease to the resident.
One thing I want to talk about is essentially cloning yourself, which is what you're doing with the VA and with the in-park managers. That is essential to scaling any business, whether you're cloning yourself through AI or through actual employees or contractors. Walk me through that process with the VA. What are some of the responsibilities that you're moving to the VA, and how has that training process been like as you scale this business?
Yeah, so right now she's going through her rent manager training, which is the software we use. And so she'll be able to navigate any tenant issue. So a tenant reaches out and they say, hey, I'm having a hard time logging onto my account. Can you help me? So the VA will, call them or text them back and forth or email and help them get logged in. Or if they have balance inquiries or some kind of other issue between the resident and me, that VA, she will be able to handle those issues, especially with the software. She'll also do some of the billing that we have, uploading invoices and doing any of the back end software work, updating resident accounts, phone numbers, addresses, emails, contact information, all that stuff goes into the software. So she'll do all that data entry.
It's a lot of the kind of minute counting almost work that drives us crazy. And you're able to pay someone else to do that for you, which is fantastic. With that time that you're essentially buying back through this VA, what are you allocating that time toward as you continue to grow the business?
That time will be for acquisition. So underwriting parks and submitting letters of intent. Because that's what drives the business is more revenue. So if you could bring more money in the door, you can backfill your position with another employee if the money's coming in. But you need cash flow to hire more people. So there's a delicate balance between buying or having too much and being drowned in it and not bringing anybody on soon enough. So you kind of got to bring people on sooner than you need them and then fill it in with more deals. It's like my experience so far.
Playing catch up a little bit, trying to feed the machine without having the machine feed on itself is a tough balance to strike. One question I did want to ask, going back to the Dave Ramsey model, there's a lot of folks in the United States right now that aren't really in a position to invest super heavily into real assets, whether it be gold or silver or real estate. What would your advice as someone who's a Ramsey coach, or at least has been certified in that and has now transitioned into the investor part of the Kiyosaki investor quadrant, what would your advice to those folks be who are maybe working a W-2 job or a 1099 job and are striving toward something like what you've built for yourself?
Yeah, if I was in that position, like I was working that W-2, I would say focus on earning as much as you can within the W-2 or finding an alternative W-2 job that pays more, saving that money, and then addressing the housing issue, because that's usually your largest expense. So if you're renting or owning, and if you can house hack where you buy a home and put other people in there and rent rooms, you could significantly reduce your housing expense. And that's the majority of where your money's going. So if you can get your housing under control and increase your revenue, you are in a much better position to invest into something larger on the next swing.
Absolutely. It gives you a financial safety net, because if you know that your biggest expense is being taken care of through, either roommates or people who are living in a quadplex or duplex right beside you, that gives you the ability then to take risks on, like you mentioned, a W-2 that may pay you higher, or maybe it's a sales position that is less guaranteed but has a higher earning potential, or maybe it's starting your own business. Finding ways to reduce your total expenses each month just gives you that latitude. And I think house hacking it's been here for for not just decades, but hundreds of years, probably thousands of years, as families have lived together and helped share that load. So I totally agree with that. Just wanted to touch on a little bit more the underwriting side of things. So that's what drives the business. That's what you're focused on right now. What is the first thing that you look at when a seller finance deal hits your desk?
So I'm looking at how many units are occupied. That's a huge thing. So if you have a high occupancy, I'm more interested in that park. If it's 30% occupied, I'm passing. That's way too much infill for me. So I want to see a lot of occupancy. Preferably they're tenant-owned homes, but if not, survivable. And then I'd like to see what utility structures there are. So is it private utilities or public utilities? That just goes into how much cost is it going to be to have an operator or other chemicals that you got to buy for the well. So that changes your operational expenses. So those are like your key things. And then also looking at how much are they getting on regular rentals? So what does a 2-bedroom rental rent for in this area? So if you know that a 2-bedroom rents for, $1,000 a month, the lot rent should be close to $500 a month for an A-class facility. So if you can get $425 and they're only charging, $300 right now, there's a big gap in where you could bring rents to over time. So I think finding where the value is inside of that park that they're not using is you find more deals that way that people overlook.
That makes sense. And just for my knowledge, that calculation, when you're looking at, say, $1,000 a month 2-bed versus a $500 a month lot rent, is that calculation just, hey, take the 2-bed rent, split it in half? That's probably where you're at. Or how do you land upon that lot rent that you end up charging?
That gives you a baseline of what it could be for a nicer park. And then if that meets the back of the napkin criteria and you're serious about this deal, I mystery shop all the parks in the area. I call and say, hey, I'm looking to move my grandmother in here. What is the lot rent? So I mystery shop all those other operators and I choose the ones like UMH or the bigger ones that are following the market and creeping up market rent. So where it could be in the future. So then you have a really accurate number of what the lot rents could be.
That makes sense. And I used to work at Aldi, so we used to mystery shop the grocery stores as well, just to see like how our operations doing. Mm-hmm. Is there any place that we can be more efficient? It's really interesting in the real estate space doing the mystery shopping, because what you're doing is you're building out your pro forma. You're building out what is my revenue potential and what is my expense potential based on what are other folks charging back water? Are they charging back electricity? Is everything master metered? Or is it separate? And then also just the quality of the experience. I'd be curious to learn from you as you've mystery shopped these parks. Have you thought of different ways that you can differentiate yourself from them just by offering a better customer experience?
Yeah. So you think of it as the customer journey. What does that look like when a resident calls in for, a prospective resident wants to rent there? They call in. What is their experience on the call? Where do they go after that? Are you showing them an available unit as quickly as possible on the prospective side? And then also your resident. When you do a change of ownership, it's a dramatic change for residents. So you have new ownership coming in. They're uncertain. They don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to redevelop this park or are they just going to raise rent and disappear? So I think when I deliver my resident packet, it has, who we are, the name of the park, if we rebrand it, all of our contact information, all the information about how to pay rent, what we're doing, the projects that we're working on, what value we're going to be providing to them if we're doing like free cleanup days or we're doing community events, are we repaving the roads? All that's in there so the resident can see like, okay, these guys are going to at least, they're saying they're going to come in here and do stuff. So at least lets them know what we'd like to do once we acquire and move forward. So that's after I close. Most of the time I've been hand delivering those to residents. So knock on the door, hand them the resident packet, answer any questions they have, and then move to the next home. But I was going door to door doing that. So it was a good experience, and it was good for the resident to meet someone on the management team that was going to be taking this over so they can meet someone face to face.
Yeah, I interviewed another mobile home park investor, Troy Helton, and he was doing a very similar thing. He also self-manages his parks. And one thing that he mentions is sometimes he lives in the parks, and that allows him to really understand the resident dynamic, who's who, what's going on in the park. With your on-site managers, do you feel as though they're kind of your eyes and ears as well?
Yes. So sometimes you don't know who's going to be the in-park manager. Maybe there's one existing, maybe there's not. So on the bottom of that packet, it says, hey, do you have any experience in electrical, plumbing, contracting, landscaping, or are you interested in a management position? In any relevant experience, just email my email. And so when I pass out those packets, anybody that may be interested in becoming a park manager can email me directly with interest. So sometimes I've kept the in-park manager and sometimes I have a new one based on the packet that I brought out. So they're definitely my eyes and ears in the park. Anything going on, I lean on them for information and to go find out what's going on with the resident, or if there's something going on in a lot, or if there's a water leak, I lean on them to go out there, take a picture, and at least let me know what's happening. So they've been a crucial role in making these parks successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you had any struggles with folks who either used to pay with cash or used to pay with check in person at these parks? And how did you move them into the new system of paying online?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. A lot of people in these parks still pay with check and cash until I transition ownership, because all my payments go through Rent Manager. So they can either pay credit card, debit card, ACH, or there's a cash pay option where they take an account number to Walmart and they can pay cash at the customer service desk, and then it gets direct deposited to the park account. So that's been a key for people that do want to pay cash. They still can. However, they do have to drive it to Walmart. So we also don't accept mailed in checks. You have to set up an online payment. We do not accept mailed in checks.
Yeah, mailed in checks create such an opportunity for them to get lost in the mail.
Yes.
So I think that's a great operational change.
It is a transition though, because a lot of them are very resistant to it. So there is some hand holding on getting their account set up. So if they call in, you got to answer the call and help them set up their account, or at least have someone that's going to help them set up their account. So that is a lot of the transition work when you buy a property, is onboarding 76 residents onto this new payment platform, which they're unfamiliar with. So it is a lot of hand holding and a lot of work. But once you get them on board, going forward, there's not much work, changing passwords occasionally.
How do you structure private lending funds for these kinds of projects? Are you still using private lenders? Are you more so leaning on seller financing? What does that structure look like from a debt and equity perspective?
Yeah, so I'll do both. I like seller financing deals. I've been doing bank loans with a partial seller finance. I've done full private lending deals where they're in first position. I've done partial seller finance, partial private lending. So I'll mix them all together to whatever blended amount gets me the best price and the best deal to make it work. But I do have private lenders, a few of them, but I'm definitely open to having more. And then I also have a short-term lending fund that does the renovation projects. So if I'm renovating like 4 homes, that fund will lend on the renovation budget for those particular homes. And then once they're sold off or rented, that money goes back into the fund and then recycled to work on another renovation project. So that it offsets me putting cash in for the small renovations and could keep that flowing.
Nice. That's awesome. The economy's fluctuating quite a bit recently. With that fluctuation, especially between, AI and all the different things going on, how do you assess tenant-based risk? So folks not being able to pay a certain amount of money. How do you assess that with job loss and different things going on in the economy right now?
Yes, so far in my experience, a lot of these residents are on Social Security, or they're working a job where you need a physical person. Like they're working at Dollar General or Walmart or another manual labor job like contractors and plumbers or other types of work that you still need human beings to do it. So a lot of the risk I see is from white collar jobs kind of disappearing more than what this is primarily is workforce housing and blue collar jobs. So I think we're less at risk, than most other like A-class apartments that have all white collar workers for the most part. And when someone loses their job that lives in an A, B, or C class apartment and they drop one down, we're there to catch them. So if someone's living in a C class apartment, can no longer afford a $1,200 rent payment, they come to us and now they can pay $700. So we're happy that people are coming to us because they need more affordable housing.
Yeah, absolutely. When do you choose not to use leverage on a deal? Would you leverage all deals? Have you considered buying deals in cash? What does that look like to you from a cost benefit analysis standpoint?
I personally would use leverage at a reasonable rate. So most of the commercial loans are all 70% or right around there anyway. So that kind of works out. But I don't think I would ever just pay all cash and just leave my cash in there, because you could borrow at 7% or less and go buy another deal and amortize another loan. So for me, it's the wealth creation of amortizing debt over time and continuing to leverage my own capital to go out and buy more deals.
Yep. And how do you look at kind of going back to the Ramsey style of thinking? How do you look at that dichotomy between Kiyosaki and Ramsey as you look toward the future? Is there a certain Dave Ramsey rule that you personally continue to follow yourself? Or are you more so in the Kiyosaki camp, or do you mix them together? What does that look like to you?
No, I'm all on board on the Kiyosaki camp at this point. I don't agree with Dave saying you have to pay cash for everything. I think maybe at a certain point in people's lives that's applicable. But if you're truly trying to build wealth, leverage is the key.
So speaking of leverage, what systems have you built in order to leverage your time a little bit better that allowed you to retire from the workforce and now stay retired as you continue to build your mobile home park portfolio? You've not gone back to work a W-2 employee. So what are some of those systems that you've built? How do you structure your time? What are some of the habits that make you really effective and successful in what you're doing right now?
Yeah, right now, a lot of that leveraging of time is through Rent Manager. Having that software for rent collection and most of the tenant issues are filtered through that system. So that allows me to answer them as needed and when they come in, and I'm not chasing people for paper checks. So that saves me a ton of time in general. And then on top of that, bringing on the VA to help me with doing the manual tasks. But right now I'm still actively working, managing, and asset managing this portfolio more than anything. So it's very active. I know everybody on the internet says it's super passive, but that, in my experience, that is not accurate, because every day I'm up here in the office working on something, always adjusting the knobs and pulling the handles to operate this as best as I can. So at some point, I would love for that to become slightly more passive by filling it in with another employee, like an operations manager. But right now, I am living on the cash flow that's coming in from these parks. So that's enough for me to retire, my girlfriend to retire, but not enough yet to have free time.
And if you were to start over today with $50,000 and no portfolio, what would your first move be?
That's a good question. So I would probably do a single family residential home that I live in, low money down, 3 to 5% down, and fill it with other people and rent the rooms out. So immediately I'm reducing my housing expense, still have some cash left over to then continue on that journey and find another deal to buy. But that would at least get my foot in the door and start me off somewhere.
Awesome. Yeah. Reduces your risk and your outlay each month so that you can take on more risks and potentially have a much higher return distribution. I love that answer. Last question here. What is the legacy that you see yourself building that has nothing to do with the number of units that you own?
You just took my answer. So that is, I don't know if I have an answer for that right now. I don't have too much of a legacy plan yet. I have a 1-year goal of how many lots I want to get to, but we can't use that answer. Otherwise, this is my trajectory of what I'm working on. I know that I didn't want to work a W-2, so I started doing this. And where that leads me to, I'm not sure yet, but I'm very excited to be on the journey moving forward and growing each time that I do a deal.
And what is that 1-year goal?
So my 1-year goal is 500 lots total.
Nice. And you're currently at about 300, right? So about 200 this year?
242. And so I'll have to do a little bit better than that to make it to 500.
Okay. I believe you can do it. Karl, thanks for joining the podcast. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, AJ. I appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Capital Conversations podcast. We will be back again soon with our next guest. Until then, have a great day.